But poetry began with the history of humanity, right? And we like poetry. We are attracted to poetry. Why? Why we are attracted to poetry? It is a very important basic question, right? When we see or hear beautiful thing, we say it's poetic, right? If you look at a beautiful painting, oh, it's poetic, right? It's not poetry, but it looks like poetry, right? Which means it is not a poem, but it is like poetry. And actually, 19th century poet Coleridge made a distinction, right? He made a distinction between a poem and poetry, right? Poem. According to him, a poem is a work, a piece of work. Poetry, you can call it poetry, right? It's poem, we call it individually. Collectively, we call a lot of poems, we call poems. So when a person writes poetry, he's called a poet, right? Poet. So he wrote poems. He is writing poetry and things like that. Okay, then why do we like poetry? As I said, it's beautiful, right? Then, what is beauty? Can you define what beauty is? Beauty? It'll take forever, right? Right? Eventually, the definition of beauty we may arrive at may be of little value in an age, right? We make a definition. This is beauty, right? But in 100 years, people will think that's not beautiful, that's not beauty, and things like that. For example, have you seen a painting by Rubens? Rubens. He's a great painter. All the women in the painting are what? Voluptuous, of course. Kind of overweight, right? They are beautiful at the time. These days, you have to be skinny, slim, right? So the concept of beauty changed, right? Changed. Maybe in the 22nd century, maybe very overweight women will be beauty. We don't know, right? So the same can be said about poetry, right? Poetry, right? So these days, all the poems are not about beauty, right? But what is important is poetry looks for truth, right? Truth is beauty. Beauty is truth, right? Who said that? John Keats. John Keats said. Let me quote John Keats' lines. When old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain in midst of other all, than ours, a friend to man to whom thou sayest. Actually, the speaker in the poem is speaking to addressing a urn, Grecian urn, right? Vessel, container. He's talking to the urn. You shall remain forever, right? Right. You say, you, urn, say to us, beauty is truth, truth, beauty. That is all you know on earth, or all you need to know. That's what Keats said, right? So why do we study poetry then? According to John Keats, why do we have to study poetry? to become a better person, right? Beauty is truth. Truth, beauty, right? And all of you are very practical persons. You are very practical. You have to get jobs, right? You live on the ground, not in heaven, right? So you have to get a job, right? To get a job, poetry will help you, right? Poetry will help you speak and write beautifully and logically and truly, right? So let's study and appreciate poetry fully, because poetry is key to success and happiness, right? Okay, now I have to do the recording. So everybody got the handout. While I'm reading, you try to summarize it, right? You make a summary, right? And you have to submit the summary on a sheet of paper. Okay, everyone got a sheet of paper? No? Okay. I'm going to have it recorded, so it's kind of boring for you. So concentrate on your essay. 45 minutes, okay? Okay, today I'm going to read an essay titled Reading the Poetics of John M. Synge, Nature and Poetry in the Aran Islands and Rider to the Sea. Let me read the abstract. J.M. Synge is probably one of the greatest playwrights Ireland has ever had, but he has often been slighted by many, including James Joyce, but Yeats seems to have found him the greatest of all playwrights in his time. The paper claims that Synge was well prepared to write great plays even before he visited Aran, and it offers his prose work, The Aran Islands, as evidence. It is already a great piece of work, very poetic, full of observations, feelings, and thoughts, which he draws for the plays he is to write. Actually, this article is based on the presentation I did in the last year at the international conference hosted by the English Language and Literature Association of Korea. Let me go to the first section, section 1. W.B.H. in his 1923 Nobel Prize address, the Irish dramatic movement, makes special mention of two of his friends, Lady Gregory and John Synge. Lady Gregory was his colleague and an ardent patron of his when Yeats was in difficult times, psychologically and physically, being repeatedly rejected by his lifelong love, Maud Gonne. And even when Yeats set his hands to writing his early plays, a few of which have both of their names, that is Lady Gregory and Yeats. As an accomplished playwright who was awarded Nobel Prize in Literature in recognition of plays, as well as of his poetry, Yeats thinks Synge, who died in 1909, was the greatest dramatic genius of Ireland. Autobiography, 138. To some, and to me indeed, Synge is a great playwright, if not the greatest of Ireland. To some, however, that is not so convincing. Actually, Synge is probably the greatest playwright. His play is very beautiful. And it's surprising. The very first work is a masterpiece, Usually, even great playwrights write the first plays are not very good, right? Even for Shakespeare, the first play is kind of practice. But for Synge, his first play is a masterpiece, great piece. And two of the first plays is, one of the two plays he did in his early days is Riders to the Sea. It's a great play, right? I'm talking about that play. To some people, however, that is not so convincing. For example, two scholars, Green and Stephen, I'm going to read their idea of John Synge. Synge's visit to the Aran Islands in 1894 must be one of the most remarkable examples on record of how a sudden immersion in a new environment converted a man of ostensibly mediocre talent, a complete failure, in fact, into a writer of genius. The decision for Synge to go was made by Yeats's suggestion. When I came across this comment on the caliber of Synge, I became curious to know how a complete failure, in fact, turned into a writer of genius. Synge's The Aran Islands. This is a prose work. It's a collection of essays. Not very thin, but very beautiful. And you can get the book on it. Synge's The Aran Island is not merely a travelogue. It is the gem of his work that shines forth brilliant through an age. I'm not the only one that thinks so. T.L. Han, a great scholar, is one of the first that saw the greatness of Synge as writer. Though he touches on his books in passing, just as W.B. Yeats touches on Synge here and there, without mentioning the book. T.L. Han's general introduction to Synge, the complete plays, is probably the best introduction to the real Synge, though there is some reservation in it when he discusses language. Han's concluding analysis of Synge's rhythm is closed with a quote of Yeats's insight into Synge's dramatic language. What follows is what Han says with the support of Yeats. Yet, any attempted analysis of technical devices is no more a gesture that may draw attention to the subtleties of the language, which only attains its full life when spoken in the theater by those who can command its strange harmonies and overtones. It is true that the strong rhythms may become monotonous in the reading, but even in the amateur productions, it'll come to life if the imagination allows the prose to speak for itself. On this, we may quote Yeats. What follows is Yeats, what Yeats said. Synge found the check that suited his temperament in an elaboration of the dialects of Kerry and Aran, the Aran Islands. The cadence is long and meditative, as befits the thought of men who are much alone and who, when they meet in one another's houses, as the way is at the day's end, listen patiently, each man speaking in turn and for some little time, and taking pleasure in the vaguer meaning of the words in their sound. It seems to me that Han discusses the language in Synge's plays, whose subtleties it is difficult to catch unless it is on stage, while Yeats talks about Synge's literary language in general, that is under the influence of Gaelic, the Aran Islanders speak in the quotes above. And I thought I have to agree with Yeats, who claimed that Synge was the greatest dramatic genius of Ireland, and that reading his prose, the Aran Islands, Synge is indeed a truly great poet who is so aesthetic an eye and so sensitive an ear and so tender a heart to observe and sympathize with the people and nature in the islands and the sea and the sky, see and hear the slightest changes in and the smallest movements of animals and plants, smell and feel keenly all that surround them living there. It is noteworthy. What is noteworthy is the fact that along with the profound love and understanding of nature and the Irish people, there is a passionate realization of its cruelty, loneliness, and the uncertain menaces of mountain and of sea. Yeats also finds this characteristic in Synge. Synge told me once that he lived in some peasant's house. He tried to make those about him forget that he was there, and it is certain that he was silent in any crowded room. It is possible that low vitality helped him to be observant and contemplative. His passion, this passion makes him observe well all about him, nature, animals, and people on the island. Synge is like the fisherman, and Yeats is the fisherman, a man who does not exist, a man who is but a dream. With this realization, the playwright is to write a good work, Riders to the Sea. But when you read the Aran Islands, you will know that what is to flower in the play has already been fully displayed in this very rare prose work. Thus, here I aim at reading the Aran Islands. These supremely beautiful prose pieces, and comparing what's been observed in the Aran Islands with what's become art in the greatest one-act play in the last century, Riders to the Sea. Synge described the Aran Islands. This is the beginning of the book. The Aran Island is extremely beautiful. There are 3 islands, right, off the west coast of Ireland, and I stayed there for a week or so there. I stayed on the largest island, and actually John Synge stayed on the middle-sized island. The geography of the Aran Islands is very simple, yet it may need a word to itself. There are 3 islands: Aramor, the North Island, about 9 miles long, Inishmaan, the middle island, about 3.5 miles across, and nearly round in form, and the South Island, Inisher, in Irish, East Island. Like the middle island, but slightly smaller. They lie about 30 miles from Galway, up the center of the bay, but they are not far from the cliffs of County Clare on the south, or the corner of Connemara on the north. This is the first paragraph of the 3-paragraph foreword to his book, The Aran Islands, which was published in 1911 after he died in 1909. Actually, there's a footnote, and in the footnote, I mentioned that this Aran Island must have published before he died, I think, right? Because he mentioned it in his letter, right? So the two paragraphs are almost as short as this paragraph. This foreword seems to me to be a glimpse of his characteristic style, which is to flower in his plays later on. Let me show the first and last of the book's paragraphs. The first 2 one-sentence paragraphs. Actually, I teach you that you shouldn't write one-sentence paragraph, right? One sentence usually contains more than 7 sentences, things like that, right? But Synge broke the rule, right? So, one sentence is 1 paragraph, right? So, but usually one sentence consists of half a dozen, more than a half a dozen sentences, right? Okay, this is the first 2 one-sentence paragraphs. I'm in Aramor, sitting over a tough fire, listening to a murmur of Gaelic that is rising from a little public house under my room. First paragraph. Second paragraph. The steamer, which comes to Aran, sails according to the tide, and it was 6 o'clock this morning when he left the quay of Galway in a dense shroud of mist. Then the third paragraph keeps describing the shoreline of Galway in dense fog, poetically and calmly, and then the passengers. Then the fourth paragraph begins the depiction of his first contact with Aranmore that comes in sight. His unusually perceptive and enlightening observations of people, animals, plants, and the sky and the sea of the three islands are unfolding in an enchanting way through the whole book. And finally, the book ends in a one-sentence paragraph. But could the story ever end with so much reverberation in our heart like this story? The next day, I left Inishmaan with a steamer, period. This is the end of this book. Very impressive, right? Just prior to this last paragraph, Synge describes this last party on Inishmaan, to which he will never come back again in one sentence. A little late, when the party broke up, downstairs, my old man got nervous about the ferries. They live some distance away and set off across the sandhills. In the Aran Islands, Synge never loses a sense of balance in form and matter, not to mention love and passion for nature and people in these islands. The whole prose, can't we call it a prose poem, is a well-made piece of music itself from start to finish. No rhythm in the language is out of key, as he has a keen ear for music. Okay, let's go to section 2. Now, I'd like to focus on the two aspects in Synge, the poet, the visual and the oral. First, Synge is sensitive to the music and languages. As a matter of fact, sometimes he plays the violin to accompany the dancing of the islanders who enjoy dancing. Actually, he is a fiddler. He is a musician. He wanted to be a musician when he was young. He has once wanted to be a musician, as he says, in my 16th year, everything changed. I took to the violin, lost almost completely my interest in natural science, although the beauty of nature influenced me more than ever. As in the first paragraph, part 1, the book consists of 4 parts with illustrations by Jack Yates, the younger brother of W.B.H. Jack Yates is actually the greatest impression painter of Ireland. But he is more than an impression painter. He is an expressionist painter. Wonderful. I think he was influenced by Kokoschka, Austrian expressionist painter. His painting is wonderful, right? And Kokoschka admired Jack Yates' painting, right? They liked each other's paintings. Synge is busy hearing and looking, a visitor who, for the first time, has just landed on the North Island, Aranmore, listening to a murmur of Gaelic, and 6 paragraphs later, a little after midday, when I was coming back, one old half-blind man spoke to me in Gaelic, but in general, I was surprised at the abundance and fluency of the foreign tongue. Then, on page 4, they, 2 little girls, spoke with a delicate, exotic intonation that was full of charm and told me with a sort of chant how they guide ladies and gentlemen in the summer to all that is worth seeing in their neighborhood. At the beginning of the book, we learn that the highly oral Synge then described to leave Aranmore for Inishmaan, the middle island where Gaelic is generally spoken. The life is, he thinks, lived in most primitive ways. In spite of the charm of my teacher, the old blind man I met the day of my arrival, I've decided to move on to Inishmaan, where Gaelic is more generally used and the life is perhaps most primitive that's left in Europe. Synge is to stay and live in a cottage on Inishmaan, the middle island, for a few weeks each year from 1898 and 1902. He died in 1909, hearing the people speaking Gaelic every day. I'm settled at last in Inishmaan in a small cottage with a continual drone of Gaelic coming from the kitchen that opens into my room. Not only that, but also Singh gets used to the way of life on Inishmaan. One day, he learns to walk the way man first walked on rocks and in fields. He has never realized it when living in other places like Dublin or elsewhere, where life is adapted in new ways, which have long become part of our life today. He walks the way primitive man walked. At first, I threw my weight upon my heels as one goes for nearly a mile, jumping from one rock to another without a single ordinary step. And here I realized that toes have a natural use, for I found myself jumping toward any tiny crevice in the rock before me and clinging with an eager grip in which all the muscles of my feet ached from their exertion. The absence of the heavy boot of Europe has preserved to these people the agile walk of the wild animal, while the general simplicity of their lives has given them many other points of physical perfection. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and we'll continue on Thursday. Okay, thank you.